Hello everyone, it's Sakiziel here, and today I'll be reacting to the Mordian Iron Guard 5-ish minute lore episode 38 by Old Man Lore Stories in Theory. As always, I highly recommend you check out Old Man's channels, the Old Man Reacts and his lore channel. Well, he makes some great stuff and it's been fun watching his videos. You should also join his Discord, but he's a fun guy, and he's fun to hang out with, and there's also lots of other fun people in there too. Ooh, a link in both to his Discord and to the original video will be in the description box below. And without further ado, let's begin.
General Medicaid warning. The views expressed in 5-ish minute lore, the lore delivered in rants, are sanctioned by their scholar Progenium as excess-rageous. Prolonged exposure can result in loss of IQ, high blood pressure, random outbursts, and blunt force trauma to the skull, resulting in unconsciousness. Please consult your local physician for more information.
No remorse, no mercy, no forgiveness. Not a single step back.
Wait, is that warrior tier?
Not a single moment of hesitation. You will not succumb to fear or doubt. And you will relent only after you have given your last moment for the Emperor. Nothing less than this will be tolerated.
You know, that's fitting considering that, from what I do know about the Mordian Iron Guard, one of them is that they have of well-pressed as clean uniforms, well-shined boots, and are so disciplined that, from what I've heard, they can almost be like servitors.
Ready, Warpugs, because this one's been a long time coming. Clean shirt, shine shoes, and you know just what they're going to do. It's the Mordian Iron Guard, baby! The sharp-dressed guardsmen of the Grimdark, and we are doing this!
Get on with it.
To fully understand the Mordian Iron Guard, you need to talk about Mordian, the world of eternal night, the world the Iron Guard calls home. Let's get depressing! Mordian is a planet tidally locked to a star, which means one side of the planet constantly faces the sun while the other side hasn't seen the sun ever. The side that faces the sun is currently doing a bang-up impression of an easy bake oven all year round. So much so that it's basically the surface of Mercury. This causes problems for human life, or any life for that matter, so the entire human population lives on the dark side of the planet. Now granted, living in the dark all day, every damn day is rough, but how can it suck more? I've got an idea. Let's cram the only livable portion of the dark side of the planet with hive cities. Now we're getting to the suck, but we're not quite there yet. Cram tens of billions of people into those hives until you're literally stacking bodies just to sleep. Alright, now it's really getting there. Add on to that Mordian's planet doesn't produce any wind, and it's hot constantly. What else can we do to make this suck even more? Let's just add...
So it's so it's cold. Well, no, sorry, not cold. So it's dark, hot, there's no wind, so it's just, at least for those people who enjoy having light, it's you basically get the worst parts of a desert world, but without even the upside of just being able to see for half the day.
A governmental system that is borderline sociopathically out of control with Stalin-era Ukraine levels of famine. That is just fantastic. Let me make it even more clear on how utterly dog water this place is to live. Some planets have a reputation about them. Cadia is the #1 most beloved asteroid field in the Imperium. Armageddon has...
I still like to imagine that on the asteroid field that is the remnants of Cadia, that there's an Imperial Guard bunker on one of those pieces that survived the detonation of that Black Stone fortress when Failbadon the Armless threw his temper tantrum. And there's just that one bunker sealed and with an atmosphere in there where the guardsmen are still holding out, saying that Cadia has not fallen.
the best ash waste known to exist. Catachan's wildlife is so insane that a chaos invasion is barely an afterthought when compared to just checking your mail. What
I've heard that, or as well, that with Catachan, Tyranids came there once. I think, was it? No, actually, I might be mistaking the Tyranids for a Chaos Incursion or something, but I heard that there was once an invasion, and the local wildlife ran off the invaders. Like, the jungle fighters didn't even really have to do anything. It was just the wildlife and the environment, like all the deadly plants, animals, fungi, etc., that repelled the invaders.
is Mordian's claim to fame? Mordian holds the prestigious title of the planet where the most people end themselves. That's right, per capita and number-wise, the top 3 causes of death on Mordian are a dreaded combination of me, myself, and I. This high achievement was granted to them with the previous title holder, well, no chance for a rematch there, eh, Rocky? Who was the previous title holder of the Get Me Off This Rock or I'll Do It Myself award? Nostromo, where Conrad Curse lived.
You know, that sounds fitting considering that, well, the fact, Nostromo was very dark as well. Well, I don't remember if it was if it was because of pollution or what, but I remember hearing it was very dark there. So, in a way, interesting parallel between the two.
Do you get it now? The only place that sucked more than Mordian in recorded Imperial history was host to the Night Haunter for a few decades. For reference, McCragg was only given the gift of Curse for a few hours and was in a full-blown panic. All of these...
The gift of Curse. the gift that keeps that keeps on giving. Giving what, you might ask? Oh, you know, trauma, flesh sculptures of the Emperor, you know, that sort of stuff.
Aforementioned reasons make the planet of Mordian suck. Today sucks, yesterday sucks, tomorrow's gonna suck, and that's pretty much the way things are going to be on Mordian for all time. The entire population is well aware of this, so you can describe the general outlook of the people of Mordian charitably as grim. This is in stark contrast to the rest of the Mordian system, which contains industrial worlds, agri-worlds, even a shrine world and a fortress world. Hell, if you're standing in one of the ziggurat highs of Mordian, you can look into the night sky and see the other planets of the system where people aren't starving, where their lives don't suck, where people actually don't want to hurl themselves off a building most of the day.
I don't want to live on this planet anymore.
It just makes it suck worse, you get it? The general pissed off rises ever higher every day.
So that begs the question, why would anyone want to live on Mordian? Like why do they even maintain a population there instead of, say, just going to any of the other planets in the Mordian system and just abandoning the world?
Now we get to talk about the Tetrarchy, the ruling class of Mordian. One thing to know about just about every planet of the Imperium is the fact that every planet has such a ruling class. Mordian is no different. When Mordian was first settled, the entire planet was strip mined to the point of absurdity, until there was practically nothing left. Mordian's
Oh, that explains a lot then.
resources are so scarce, it has almost been cut off by the Imperium on more than one occasion in the past, and that would suck hard even by Mordian standards. Because, well, I don't think I need to elaborate that a high planet situated on the dark side of a planet that is tidally locked would have a problem with food production, and Mordian barely gets enough food at this point to keep its population alive. Losing the protection of the Imperium and the massive food imports that come with it would turn that situation from horrific to outright laughable within only a few hours.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that as soon as the news breaks, if they were cut off from food imports from the rest of the Imperium, the population number is going to take a very sharp decline very, very quickly. But on the other hand, if there's any vampires running around, I suppose they're going to be having banquets every night.
The Tetrarchy, knowing this, quite literally marshals all the resources of the planet, regardless if anyone complains or not. The state owns everything, the civilian owns nothing, and no one cares if you have a problem with it or not. Food, water, clothing, all of it is strictly controlled and rationed out to the civilians by the Tetrarchy, and if you aren't there when they are rationing your portion, well, I guess you just didn't need it then, did you? Which leads me fantastically along to the organized crime problems, because why the hell not? No, we're not just talking about your average run-of-the-mill underhive gangers. That would be too noble, right, for Mordian. No, you see, Mordian has roving bands of cannibal mobs.
So instead of holding you for your belongings, they're after you for you.
Yes, I said mobs, as in plural, as in a few 100,000 people are gonna show up, kill everyone they come into contact with, and have a picnic with a heaping helping of sweet pork. The criminal gangers of Necromunda will be more pleasant to deal with. Speaking of which, the criminal gangers of Mordian, well, by the Emperor, do I even need to go into this? It's horrifying. Now, knowing everything that I just said and understanding human nature, do you think the nobility of Mordian for even a split second would use a bit of tact in how they use the resources of the planet? Maybe give themselves a lesser share of what passes for wealth on Mordian too. I don't know, help their fellow...
Of course not. They're nobles. They're like the kind of nobility that exists in 40k. They're likely going to see the cannibals out there and the starving people who are considering possibly becoming cannibals, and just think, well, to preserve ourselves, we better just make sure our food supplies are extra secure. Can't have any of those filthy commoners getting their hands on it.
Fellow man? Oh, who the hell am I kidding? You all know how this story goes. The Tetrarchy waves their wealth and power around without restraint or issue. Imagine, if you will, a bunch of starving walking skeletons, barely surviving at all, stacked up like sardines in a skyscraper. They haven't had a bath in months. They can barely find the will to get out of bed every morning. It's dark, it's hot, everything stinks, and they're hoping for a good solid drink of water today, and that's it. And then the door gets kicked open, and Little John comes in with 4 women on each arm and a turkey leg in each hand, with people spraying champagne over him like he just won the Super Bowl. That is the level of tact and concern with their fellow man they have on display here. All the while the Tetrarchy is doing this, the common citizen is just looking down in their hand at the corpse star sandwich made out of their cousin who decided to do a high dive off a hab block last week while trying to swat away someone gnawing on their shin. That
A high dive off a skyscraper with someone gnawing on their shin. Did he at least do a few flips on his way down?
is the level of restraint these jackasses in the Tetrarchy have, and they don't take their foot off the pedal at all. Now we've got the preamble out of the way. You have a hilariously overcrowded society with a food and water situation that is considered inconsistent at the best of times. Housed in conditions that way could be considered atrocious for livestock. Living on a planet where it's hot, stagnant, and where more people have seen Elvis than have seen sunlight. It's
Wait, Elvis?
a dark, miserable, muggy, poor, starving, thirsty life from birth until death. And when you die, in whatever manner you die, no one is gonna bat an eye, because the worst thing that comes out of it is you shit yourself, in which case the stench gets even worse and maybe, just maybe, a little bit better. And the best thing you do is feed a family with the food they make out of what remains of you, and maybe, just maybe, the people around you get a few inches of shoulder room to sleep in. There are several planets that could qualify as being the worst of the Imperium, and I consider myself well versed in painting a picture so you can visualize places, events, and times. I am proud of my ability to convey a thought or an idea, but I cannot, try as I might in any way, shape, or form, begin to describe the depressing hellhole on display here. If you gave the average Mordian citizen a chance to live on Krieg, they'd happily kill for the opportunity. If you offered a Mordian citizen a one-way transport ticket to Catachan, they would powerbomb their neighbor's kids through a glass table onto a bed of nails.
So, the places that most people would think of as being just absolutely horrible, the people of Mordian would be like, nah, we want that. Just at this point, I wonder if any of them would want to be sent to was it again was it Savlar, was it that was the name of the one of the moons of Armageddon where the chem dogs come from?
In fact, out of all the worlds in the Imperium, no matter how horrific, how hot, how cold, no matter the civilization level, no matter the flora or fauna, if you offered your typical Mordian the chance to go to that world, your typical Mordian civilian would happily yeet their grandmother into a wood chipper for a 1 out of 1,000 chance. Mordian sucks. So what possibly could be keeping the citizens of this planet from rising up and destroying everything? Well, at some point in the history of Mordian, before things got hilariously bad, apparently someone in the nobility turned on Brain 1 and let a neuron fire off, and that neuron connected to Logic EXE and determined that once things well and truly enter this range of extreme suck, there will be a problem with the civilian population. Normally, in order to handle problems with the civilian population, you want to get your hands on a large number of Adeptus Arbites, the law enforcement arm of the Adeptus Administratum. Only one problem with that.
I'm assuming that's a case where, like, despite what the Arbites have access to, if the majority of the planetary population rises up simultaneously, they're gonna get overwhelmed.
Resources were starting to plummet. The Arbites are very expensive, and the Arbites themselves, who learned of Mordian's Imperium resource issues and seeing the population of the planet, promptly pledged not to touch the planet with a barge pole. Well, there's a problem, and the first food rite just kicked off down in the Underhive. Yay! That's when the same neuron that was flying around hit Logic EXE and collided with Thought EXE and promptly careened into Solution EXE. Whoever this noble was, they came up with a bangin' good idea.
Attention, citizen!
I'm going to specify here that this is just a bit of theory crafting because quite literally the backstory of the Mordians doesn't go this in depth, but there are some things we can assume based off basic human nature and practicality.
2 cups of rolling ice and peel nobles, 1 teaspoon of common sense, 1 clove of logic, whatever was left of my sanity, 5 pounds of bacon grease from Herman von Straub, a shake of brain damage, an 8-ounce container of Emperor's Mercy bars, apply a rat dust for seasoning, simmer at apoplectic rage for an hour.
It's just a simple matter of 2 plus 2, considering what these guys do on a day-to-day basis in the Mordian Iron Guard. So, with that said, theory crafting commence. We can safely assume that the Mordians produce standard Imperial Guard regiments, and that the first few regiments of Iron Guard were a PDF force, because the main reason they existed at all was to keep the civilian population from tearing the Tetrarchy out of their high spowers and devouring them, quite literally in the case of the cannibal mobs. First, the Tetrarchy went on a recruitment drive, and you can imagine not many people gave enough of a damn about the Tetrarchy to willingly put themselves as riot control against their fellow civilians. The training regimen itself was just as insanely horrific, with a focus being placed so intensely on discipline that after a short time, those who had been recruited barely resembled humans anymore. But then the real genius of the Noble's plan would show through, because once this
Let me guess. Is it gonna be a case where the people just go, hey, if you defend the nobles, you will be required to be fed to a certain minimum degree to ensure combat effectiveness, which means you're getting food and water.
first batch graduated, it became very clear to the rest of the planet that this force was going to be built different. On most worlds, the PDF is your job. On Mordian, it would have to be something else entirely. The Tetrarchy would have needed to put together a benefits package that was, to be quite blunt, obscene. The following is not confirmed, but it's the only thing that makes real sense, so bear with an old bag for some theory crafting. Any man or woman who volunteered, got through the strict recruitment, and made it through the basic training to become a member of the Mordian Iron Guard would have themselves and their immediate family removed from the actual hive proper and be relocated to a more safer and secluded level of the upper hive. They would have their own residence or barracks, clean water, plentiful food, and security. This is all by design. This is headcanon once again. Their children would have had to receive proper education, would find themselves well positioned to lead successful lives within Mordian society. All a member of the Mordian Iron Guard would have to do to maintain this position was to obey orders and without hesitation. The reason I say they would have done this is really simple. The concept of the Mordian Iron Guard living among the civilian population and not being promptly murdered is laughable. Extremely laughable. The reason I also say education for the kids is because, well, you live in a perpetual hellhole, and the general population has the moral compass of a chicken sandwich, and a hunger for one as well. There is no way, shape, or form that someone would volunteer for this unit, then in any way, shape, or form be comfortable staying near the rest of the civilian population. Theory crafting over. The first order of...
Well, yeah, because I imagine that people who join the Iron Guard might be seen by the civilian population as, you know, as potentially having, say, sold them out to protect the same people who they might view as being the cause of the problem.
Business for the newly forged Iron Guard was to put down the food riots, so they marched straight out of the upper highs, brilliant dress for uniforms, dazzling, and promptly laid the smackdown on their former neighbors. The Mordian Iron Guard has only one method of pacifying a riot, and that is comprehensively. After all, if the Tetrarchy has no issues with roving bands of cannibals devouring segments of the population, why would they have a single issue with the newly forged Iron Guard turning into lawnmower men and women and turning the entire rioting population center into a ghost town? The Mordian Iron Guard...
Well, I imagine that around that time, people must have been enjoying a lot of corpse starch.
Quickly became more feared and hated by the Hive City's population than the actual Tetrarchy that employed them. This gives your Mordian Iron Guard soldier far more than enough motivation to stay in line. After all, step out of line, break discipline, and you and your family will find yourselves back in the streets of the Hive proper, and, well...
Everyone hates them.
On a planet like Mordian, a kerosene cat in hell is going to survive longer than you. From that point onwards, the Tetrarchy employed the Iron Guard.
Wait, did you say a kerosene cat or a kerosene can? Because I'm just imagining a cat just made entirely of kerosene.
It's less of a PDF and more like a police force, and by police force, I mean a mass body of riot busters who have no comprehension of such terms as excessive force or stupid concepts like unnecessary civilian casualties. Thinking about it like this, it becomes hilariously clear why the Tetrarchy would part the Iron Guard close by, to them as well as their families, and seek to take care of them, because to not do this would result in a massive amount of bodies extremely fast. The Mordian Iron Guard's ranks filled quickly, and before too long, anytime a well-dressed man or woman in a blue coat was sighted in the hive itself, the people nearby very quickly decided no matter what they were doing, it was time to punch the clock and beat feet out of there. Because if they didn't, they were going to have an immaculately shined boot lodged firmly up their colon. This is why the faff...
And you know what they say? You don't go to a normal hospital for a foot up the ass. No, you gotta go to a special hospital where they'll pull the person's entire body up your digestive tract and out through your mouth. And I don't think either of you want that.
Scale is blue, because if you decide to stick around to see what these sharp-dressed men and women are going to do, you're going to find out that you should have started running a long time ago, typically before you hit the ground with a fist-sized hole through you. As the supplies dwindle...
Oh yeah, because one of the things too is the if I remember correctly, the last gun issue in model that is commonly issued to the Mordian Iron Guard is, I think, was it the triplex pattern, the one with the 3 firing modes, standard, high power, and an additional even higher power mode for when you really want to make sure that something doesn't exist after you shoot it.
To the modern crawl that presently exists on Mordium, the sheer amount of riots, revolts, and downright anarchy they found themselves putting down placed your average Iron Guardsman as having more combat experience and training than pretty much any other regiment of Imperial Guard in existence, and as the violence ramped up, so did the intensity of the training the Iron Guard received, as did its martial prowess. The Iron Guard was fighting full-blown wars within Mordian's hives, continuously. This went on for centuries, if not millennia, and no one else in the wider Imperium cared. And that's when it promptly got worse, because remember everyone, It can always get worse. During a particularly blistering summer, when it was hot by even Mordian standards, a few people decided they were simply tired of embracing the suck. And they really just wanted to go to the next stage of their relationship with the suck. You know, second base and all that. They had walked with the suck, called the suck when they were feeling blue, and they had shared some of their most cherished secrets with the suck. Now they were flat out leaving candles on the stairs with a trail of discarded clothes for the suck. In other words...
You know, I don't know why they chose the Skaven to be the one unsimping for all the women in armor.
A full-blown chaos cult started on Mordian. Strange things started to be seen in the capital hive of Mordian,
You know, I'm also surprised this didn't happen sooner.
Vanandra. Winged things hovered in the dimly lit streets. People started disappearing. As the summer went on, more and more of this started giving the Tetrarchy a lot of concern in between bites of turkey leg. Because while the average Imperial noble couldn't be paid to care less about a few missing civilians, it was getting to the point where the food riots were actually calming down. That's a problem. You never really notice how loud a sound is until you start hearing it, and I guess the sound of civilians screaming, burning, looting, and the eventual sounds of the Mordian Iron Guard stomping a mud hole in those same civilians was getting extremely absent from the ambient noise. Suddenly, the planet was hit with a massive earthquake. The suck...
Ah yes, it's getting quiet. Too quiet.
Ted walked in, sat the cultists down, showed them a pregnancy test, and said it was theirs, and promptly a warp rift opened up beneath Mordian. Let me repeat that with less metaphor. The cultists had gone so far off the deep end and had killed so many people in human sacrifice to the Chaos Gods, they actually managed to open a warp rift to the Immaterium. Oh yay! The sky became a blanket of fire, turning the perpetual night into day. Demons manifested in the street, and in the skies above Mordian, the warships of the Death Guard appeared and instantly began assaulting the planet. The Underhive seemed to explode with a mixture of...
You know, I am honestly surprised that it was Nurgle that they ended up falling to, because, well, Grandpa Nurgle loves everyone. His many diseased, hideous, foul-smelling children. But I honestly would have expected either Khorne or Tzeentch more. Khorne because of, well, all of, like seriously, the madness going on with the cannibal gangs and whatnot, and people killing each other over food. But and not to mention all the riots. Or alternatively, Tzeentch because it is the Changer of Ways purview to do scheming, plotting, and those sorts of things. And attempting to overthrow the rulers of a planet gets very much in line with what Tzeentch would do.
Demons and cultists, peak horrors appeared out of nowhere to pounce on screaming victims. Bloodthirsters screamed bloody challenges across the planet. Keeper of secrets killed with a glance, and Changers of Ways floated around casting spell after spell after spell.
Oh, okay, so it was Chaos Undivided.
In the upper high spires, the Tetrarchy ordered the Astropaths to send out for help, but as soon as the Psychers tried, their brains would burn out from the sheer presence of this much chaotic power and the effort from trying to get the message through. This, if you're not taking any notes, is how a world dies horrifically. This is the point where you are well and truly screwed. There's just no surviving this half the time. Just about any other force would have run for their lives. Just about any other force would have dissolved into anarchy, turning on itself in a desperate bid for survival. The Iron Guard simply did a right face and presented arms. Buying as much time as they could, they abandoned most of the planet. The Mordian Iron Guard turned Vanandra into an absolute bastion, assembling there en masse. Every building in Vanandra was turned into a fortress. Every street became a kill box. Every single spot of the planet that could be turned into a murder hole was turned into a murder hole that the Iron Guard manned, fortified, and prepared. When the attack came to Vanandra, the battle was apocalyptic, fighting at odds that sometimes exceeded several thousands and not tens of thousands to one. They were attacked by champions of chaos, millions if not billions of cultists, and greater demons of every flavor, not to even mention the Death Guard. The Mordian Iron Guard was slowly but steadily being driven back, but at a...
Also, just the Death Guard, honestly, like, they don't even need to kill you directly. Just the aura that many of their Marines possess. It's like, just them having been in the area will kill people. And honestly, yeah, I can see why the Mordian Iron Guard wouldn't have, turned on each other, in the sense that when you think about it, well, if they turned on each other, then they're just going to deplete their numbers and resources and then still get massacred by chaos. And where would they even turn tail and run to? Like, they're the equivalent of PDF if for the purposes of, well, keeping order on the planet. So chances are they're not leaving either. Not to mention their families are there as well. So they have every incentive to stay and fight. Especially since also if they turn, then what's likely going to happen is they're definitely not getting any resupply from the nobles. Neither food, water, nor power packs or anything else.
Horrendous cost to the invaders. This wasn't a party for the forces of chaos, because every half block, every single street, every apartment, every building period was turned into a bunker that would have to be breached, taken, and cleared. The Mordian Iron Guard never broke, firing their weapons until the positions were on the verge of collapse, then withdrawing in good order to the next static line of defense. Death Guard traitor Space Marines were lured into kill boxes and mowed down. Bloodthirsters would roar.
That's impressive. Because Death Guard are notoriously durable. Mowing down Death Guards, the sheer amount of fire that must have been concentrated on them would have been ludicrous.
Or a challenge, only to be hit in the face by a full volley of last blasts hitting it all at the same time. The entire front was a streaming mass of flesh and etheric energy cut violently and suddenly short by hundreds of last blasts sounding all at once. The problem though, they just kept coming. Finally, after months of fighting, the Mordian Iron Guard was driven back to the palace steps of the Tetrarchy, and the Mordian Iron Guard stood ready to fight to the last man and the last woman. When the attack came, the Death Guard charged next to greater unclean ones of Nurgle. The Mordian Iron Guard stood in perfect formation, heavy weapons teams and tank crews manning their weapons that they had for months on end, loading and firing with a precision that would make a Skitarii cry in shame and declare themselves a disgrace to the Omnissiah. The last stand of the Mordian Iron Guard was well underway, and shoulder to shoulder the last gun of the Mordians sounded as one in volley after volley. Then, just as they were preparing to absorb the charge of every make and model of the Hordes of Chaos, the entire front of demons and greater demons simply began to evaporate. Suddenly, the charging Death Guard found themselves running along towards a wall of lasguns that only a few seconds ago had a wealth of targets to choose from. Oh shit! Oh shit! While the Mordian Iron Guard had been doing their best impersonation of a bear trap to the forces of the planet, from beyond the planet of Mordia, the Psychers of the Imperium had been working on a counterspell to break the hold of chaos on the planet. Just as the final push was being made against the Mordians on the surface, the Imperium Psychers broke the warp rift, closing it, and as the Death Guard suddenly found themselves alone, the Mordian Iron Guard showed them what it was like to chew five gum. The sky shifted back to its typical blackness, and the shapes of Imperial warships were hovering in the night sky, the occupants of which simply hovered there for a short time before taking any action, and I can tell you why. Anyone trying to relieve a planet suffering from an invasion of this scale by any other force would have been inspired to find survivors still fighting. To find survivors that were still sound of mind hidden away in a deep hole after a demonic incursion is absolutely stunning.
And especially considering that, again, Death Guard, like, you'd expect everyone to be dying of disease by this point.
Imperial forces in orbit were not just finding survivors of a demonic incursion, they were finding defenders still fighting the invader. And if that didn't make them halt their tracks in sheer amazement, the fact was that the Mordian Iron Guard was now currently routing the Death Guard off the field. Overhead in the skies of Mordian, the collective thump of every jaw hitting the floor was heard over the panicked screams of the Death Guard, who were voiding their bowels, trying to get off the planet as fast as possible. I can count on one hand the amount of planets that have survived a demonic incursion until reinforcements arrived. One.
Michael doesn't exist.
Needless to say, the second that the Imperial commanders in orbit found out about the Mordian Iron Guard, word about them spread faster than a fart in a hot car, and pretty much every commander in the segmentum wanted a regiment of these ironclad defenders. The first true guardsman regiments of Mordian Iron Guard were raised from the elite of the Mordian Iron Guard PDF formations, and if you thought this bothered the Tetrarchy, far from it. Now, as long as Mordian continues to produce these troops, their seat at the Imperial table is all but guaranteed. The world of Mordian has bred a guardsman unit that gives a whole new meaning to the word effective. The first few times they appeared on the battlefield, they were met with snorting derision from the enemies of man and outright disbelief for their allies. After all, the Mordian Iron Guard comes onto the field marching in perfect lockstep, dressed in flawless and ornamented dress uniforms with shoes so shine they sparkle. Beautiful! Their appearance is
Shoes so shined, and that part of me imagines this is them being used to deflect las weapon fire.
clean and pristine, clean shaves, giving them not the appearance of a battle-hardened veteran force, but that of a parade ground force drill team. Amateurs at combat at best, naive idiots one and all. All of that snorting and laughing stops, however, the second the fighting starts, and the Mordians unleash a biblical-scale ass-whipping that can best be described as disrespectful to the extreme. If you're
Yeah, especially when say an enemy commander gets taken out by a bunch of las guns set to the highest power mode. Or as one person put it, when you set the las gun to fuck that particular thing over there up the ass mode.
you're looking for the core of a regiment of Mordian Iron Guard, it is called discipline. Discipline past the point of absurdity. It's what sets them apart from every other guard unit. The Iron Guard follows orders immediately and will not go against those orders no matter what happens. In the history since the founding of the Iron Guard itself, there has not been a single Mordian unit to ever break on the field of battle no matter the odds or what they were facing. If you tell a regiment of Mordian Iron Guard to defend a gate, you can forget they exist for 2 weeks and they will still be there, standing in perfect formation, rifles pointed downrange and waiting. In fact, so insane is the discipline of the Mordian Iron Guard that they will obey the last orders they receive to the letter, even if that means the entire regiment gets wiped out completely to the last man and woman. And when the blade or bullet finally falls on the last Mordian, they will be in their exact spot on the line they were ordered to fight in, not even flinching as they go down. Forces that engage the Iron Guard quickly find out they are fighting a force that doesn't resemble the regiments more than it resembles an absolute murder machine.
Yeah, and this is one of the reasons why I think they're kind of like servitors in a sense, because, well, it's not that they lack, it's not like they're mindless the way servitors are, but more like effectively they are because they're so disciplined in that no matter what comes at them, they will hold their position if they're ordered to hold and fight to the last man standing. And I've also heard that they're issued grenades more frequently than normal guardsmen are, for the reason that they can be trusted not to use them until explicitly told to do so by the sergeant or by the commissar.
In fact, although what Mordian produces the most of is line infantry, Mordian Iron Guard heavy weapon, artillery, and tank teams are prized for the fact they will fight at peak efficiency past the point where anyone else would slow down and simply pass out. And the only thing that keeps the Mordians from fighting at that level is when they cross over the extreme limits of human endurance. In short, if you tell a Mordian to man this position, point this gun down range, and fire it once every minute, that Mordian will man that position, point his or her gun down range, and fire it once per minute, every minute, so accurately you can set a watch to it until they quite literally collapse nearly dead from sheer exhaustion. They will not take food breaks, they will not take water breaks, they will do as they are told. Need another example of how quick to follow orders the Mordian Iron Guard is, and how strictly disciplined they are? Take a regiment of Mordian Iron Guard, put them next to a regiment of Death Corps of Krieg, and tell them both to charge machine gun positions. They will both immediately start running towards the machine guns, but the Mordians won't duck, because they weren't told to. The second most important thing to an Iron Guardsman...
Yeah, that's another thing on the servitor comment, because, the interpreting orders very literally bit as well.
besides discipline is looking absolutely spectacular. The Iron Guard march to war in ceremonial dress uniforms, complete with frocking, medals, pins, and ribbons. They are clean shaven with their hair in order. Not a thread is out of place, not a surface left unshined. These two things in combination lead to an extremely challenging situation for a regimental commissar. Being the regimental commissar for the Mordian Iron Guard has to suck out loud.
Well, yeah, because the commissar is there to enforce discipline, or in some cases, they're there to act as a what's the word I'm looking for? Basically, since you can have forces from different worlds coming together to form an army, I've heard that commissars are sometimes there just to keep some of the differences between different regiments from coming to a head. Like if you have anyone who isn't from Krieg fighting alongside the Death Corps of Krieg.
First off, they're the Mordian Iron Guard from Mordian, and they aren't exactly the most cheerful of people. Secondly, now you've got to find a way to out-discipline a line trooper that could charitably be called a statue when not ordered to do something. And third, now you have to compete style-wise with a regiment that has fought off hordes of Nurgle and Death Guard troopers, in addition to every other flavor of demon, for months, and when they got done with that, their uniform looked more pristine than yours does right now. In fact, it wouldn't stun me, considering the balls of the members of this regiment, if they started filing uniform complaints against the commissar to the one who handles uniform complaints, who just happens to be the commissar. What the
And just imagining the commissar getting complaints from the men that they're supposed to be directing, telling them that their uniform is not up to standard.
What the hell are you gonna say? How are you gonna encourage greater heights of bravery from troops that won't flinch from bloodthirsters? How are you gonna draw your sword to give a grand speech about bravery when the woman next to you is fighting back the urge to tell you to shut the hell up and get back in formation? How much does your life suck if you're given commissarial command of the Mordians? Intensely. Yes, I'm saying that compared to the Mordian Iron Guard, your average commissar is undisciplined and has a shabby uniform. Process that for a few seconds. Your average Mordian Iron Guardsman is going to be well and truly kitted out. In fact, the Iron Guard is better equipped than most regiments. For starters, that beautiful dress uniform, it actually contains the same protective elements of flak armor. So from their neck...
Oh? So is that they have some... So I'm going to assume that underneath, there's some protective elements, and it's like, say, a vest or maybe something woven into it.
To their feet, the Iron Guard is completely covered and protected from small arms and ballistic weapons, as well as blasts from grenades and the like. Of course, someone getting hit with something like a bolter is going to tear straight through it, but this alone makes the Mordian Iron Guard better protected than your average guardsman. They also carry a sidearm, which is just a standard glass pistol, but this pistol is more commonly just a showpiece than something they will actually use day to day in carrying out their duties. The primary weapon of the Mordian Iron Guards comes from the Forge world of Triplex Fall, and it is of course the Triplex pattern lasgun. The Triplex is an extremely handy weapon for the style of warfare you'll most commonly see the Mordians assigned to, because while it lacks the burst fire and fully automatic capabilities of other lasguns, it does have other power settings that change the very way the weapon itself functions. Standard mode is just that, standard. You pop, they drop. Precision adds a fair amount of range to the shot, effectively turning the lasgun into a low-range long las. Then you have Incineration mode. This mode is more easily referred to as War Crime mode. No need for Casket mode. You have Posted Cringe mode or Hold My Beer
You posted cringe mode.
mode. Basically, getting shot by a standard shot from a lasgun would leave a hole in your chest the size of a Red Bull can. Incineration mode, you might have a calcified ribcage left, if that. Extra in the kit, you have 2 standard charge packs, and yes, I mean 2. Mordians don't take more than ordered, and breaking even a stupid rule to a Mordian is like asking Lorgar not to be cringe.
Yeah, because unlike a normal guardsman who will try and find ways and means to get as much ammunition as they can, and doing so would be against the rules, and thus the Mordians aren't going to do it.
They also have a bayonet that fits on the end of the Tripex pattern las gun, and it's less of a
Also, this art piece, like, he looks like a JoJo's Bizarre Adventure character with that musculature.
bayonet and more of a sword. Essentially, it turns the las gun into a spear. They get a fancy rucksack with their maintenance kit, sleeping bag, foul weather gear, rations, a mess kit, water canteen, and a rechargeable lamp pack just like most other guardsmen regiments. But their rucksack contains 2 extra bits of kit. First is the grooming kit, because ignoring the grooming standards is why Cadia cracked in half apparently, and the second is a uniform maintenance kit. For obvious reason. Oh, and there's the drugs. The Mordians believe that mortality and constraints to the human body are cringe, so they provided the Iron Guard with an injector and 5 doses of STEM. STEM, if you don't know, will delete your need for rest or sleep for the foreseeable future. If you take too much, you start getting the side effects best reserved for late-night TV prescription ads. Last but not least is the uplifting primer, because of course it's there. So how do you use a regiment
The Pug Falcon.
of Mordian Iron Guard? Defensively. You want to use them defensively. Only the purest idiot would get a regiment of the Mordian Iron Guard and see what they're about, and then decide them to use like other regiments such as the Death Corps Krieg. No, you find the center of your defensive line and you park them in the middle of it. Give them their orders and let them do their thing. Best way of thinking of them as a whole? A mobile defensive fortification. Putting them in a fluid environment where they have to use large amounts of personal initiative is a horrible idea, because the idea of acting outside orders makes your standard Mordian break out in hives.
Yeah, and given how they depend on orders from their superiors to do anything, it would also mean that there'd be a lot of strain on the command infrastructure to be disseminating orders to every individual squad like that all the time, just to give them even basic instructions like, oh, when you charge enemy, you know, do it through like try and keep anything that you consider as cover in order to minimize casualties. Because if you don't say that, then they will make that suicide charge.
No! Tell them to stand in a line, hold the line, and don't try to make a square block fit into a round hole. Keep it simple. Now, this isn't to say they can't perform an offensive, far from it. But I'm talking about your standard Imperial commander. The Mordian Iron Guard is extremely reliant on the chain of command and will not break from the last orders they receive. If you order the Mordians to assault a mountain, they will assault that mountain. But if their command structure is hindered from issuing orders on the ground, then simply put, they will not call back for further instructions if a situation presents itself. On the other hand, if you have an officer corps giving direct instructions on what to do, when to do it, and what to do during X, Y, and Z situations, well, that's a different story. A properly directed force of Mordians who know their orders can be quite simply unstoppable. A highly motivated group advancing, eliminating resistance, moving steadily forward and taking position after position. A wave of sharp-dressed men and women plowing through the enemy with nothing but pure grit and disciplined volley fire.
And that's one of the reasons why among the Imperial Guard regiments, since the Mordians are among some of my favorites. And as always, this was both very, very fun to watch. I enjoy Old Man's sense of humor, and also quite informative. Because there were quite a few things actually I didn't already know about the Mordian Iron Guard. And I hope everyone enjoyed watching with me. If you did, I'd appreciate if you like, comment, and subscribe. Definitely like the original video and subscribe to Old Man's channels, because he definitely deserves it. And until next time, ta-ta! you.